Welcome to Glioblastoma AKA GBM, a podcast brought to you by the Glioblastoma Research Organization, highlighting stories of GBM warriors, caregivers, medical advisors, and more. Join us this season as we connect with members of our incredible community and have meaningful and insightful chats regarding all things glioblastoma. Please note that any information provided on the show is not meant to treat, diagnose, or prevent any disease, and all information that is discussed in our conversation is what worked for the individual themselves and should not be taken as advice. The information provided on this show is not a substitute for professional medical advice, and you should contact your medical provider and healthcare team with any questions. Diane and Nick, thank you so much for being on this episode of Glioblastoma AKA GBM. Thank you for coming to meet with me in Chicago, and it is such a pleasure to be with you guys today.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
We're super excited. I know you guys have a lot to share with everyone about not only yourselves, but with glioblastoma as well. But just to get started, how did the two of you meet?
We met in Milwaukee.
I love this story. It's a blind date. He just doesn't like saying that.
So we're yeah, we're kind of old, so there was no
we're
Facebook
not old.
And things like that. So I was working at a firehouse in an area of Milwaukee called Bayview, Wisconsin. Every morning I would wake up at the firehouse, especially the firehouse, and she'd be on TV.
I was working at the NBC station at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Every morning I'm like, man, this chick's hot. I'm like, how do I get in this? And I don't want to be that creepy guy that like writes to her or something like that. So there was it happens every year. It's called Summerfest.
Mm-hmm. Like a huge music festival that's known worldwide.
Yeah, it's like 10 days long. And my friend runs into her and it goes...
In a beer line, of course.
Yeah, in a beer line. That's awesome. And he's like, my friend, my coworker really wants to meet you in this and that. So she's kind of like, I'll give him my email.
Yeah, let me be safe
Very
and give him my work number and my work email, not even my personal.
And then I think, maybe 2 days later, 3 days later?
Yeah,
we talked, and then we met for lunch a couple days later.
Yeah.
And we were just expecting, we'll have lunch, and that's kind of it. And we sat there, 4 or 5 hours?
It was hours. It went into dinner.
Yeah, it sure did. So we actually had lunch and dinner and a few drinks.
Yeah.
But we were good.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so that was 2007, and we have not been apart since that day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the rundown.
Yeah.
She was obviously pretty protective because people on the news, you get stalkers and all that stuff. Yeah. So she didn't want to tell me where she lived. So I understand that. It would have probably been weird anyways, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it worked out.
It did.
You're married, and here you
yeah,
are.
We're married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Celebrating.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The 11th year in October.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about your partner?
Being able to unload on each other, just get the stress of everything. Sometimes it's not always what people it's not perfect, but I think getting this cancer for me really put in perspective how much of a fighter she is. Mm-hmm. Because we didn't have the breakdowns.
No, not really.
We didn't have what are we going to do? Yeah. It was more like what can we do? Mm-hmm. And if you say no to me, if a doctor says whatever, we'll find someone else. Mm-hmm. We'll just keep going because when you're diagnosed and your doctor says you have 12 to 14 months to live, some people take that and depression sets in probably right away. Mm-hmm. For us, it was more, she was like, get off your ass. Let's start working. And that's what we did. I mean, it was very difficult for me, I must say, because I was still trying to wrap my head around things, getting used to the medications, the MRI, just trying to get used to a whole new schedule because it consumes your life. It consumes your life. And, it's just having your significant other adapt to that and learn this too is hard. It's just, this is difficult no matter how you say it. And I know sitting here saying just fight, it's easy to say, but you have to. Mm-hmm. You have to.
Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that I've always known this about him, but I think the thing that sort of rose to the top was his positivity. I don't think there was ever one down day. Mm-mm. And that's unheard of. I don't think there was ever a day where we were in the pits.
No, even
it wasn't perfect, but we were never in the pits. And and it was all because of you, and it was because of your positivity.
Well, even when I had the reoccurrence,
right?
It was just like, let's grab something to eat and
Right.
let's have some drinks and we're going to discuss this.
Yeah.
So it was, you get one chance at this. You get one life. Just go in for it. Just go totally in.
And that's what I think you're going to come to learn with Nick is that's sort of like the mantra that he, I think deep down always had, but then like really it was an affirmation for him when he got diagnosed was this PMA, this positive mental attitude. And you're going to hear that, throughout the discussion with him is we can all go down the spiral. The challenge is staying positive. And he did that immediately. And I am not normally like that. So it was really, it affects you in such a deep way when you have your partner who's going through, I think it's safe to say, one of the worst things ever. And they're positive. And you're like, I don't get it, but I'm going to ride the wave and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it was like going to all these doctor's appointments and things. I just called it the, 1 foot in the grave tour and just kept going and just let's see what happens. And you got to move. You got to get going because this is one of the worst diseases. Just reading about it for someone who hasn't even experienced it or has a loved one who had to go through it, just reading it is daunting.
Yeah. Have you always been an extremely positive person, or what would you attribute this positivity to?
You know what? Nothing ever went smooth for me. So, when I became a firefighter, I got such a bad infection, they were going to cut my right leg off. I've been in car accidents. I've been in some very bad situations, and you come out of it and you go, okay, what's next? So it wasn't like, oh, why me? It's always like, you know what? Okay, I'm sure something worse is going to come along, and I'm just going to have to keep fighting. Obviously, something did come along. So, and we're still going to fight this.
But what do you think, because I've asked you that before too, what do you think was like the switch that clicked on when you started to say PMA?
When they put the expiration date on me, they said 12 to 14 months.
You're just like, screw this, we're positive and making the best and keep fighting.
Yeah, because I know that's depressing to hear. It shuts your soul down.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to go out that way. I don't want to go out that way, and I don't want anybody ever to say, why didn't he try hard enough or try something else or go somewhere else? Because we were willing to go anywhere. But, Chicago's got great care. We have great doctors. We have, our whole team is just outstanding. They're outstanding. It's just, we couldn't have asked for anything more, really, besides a cure. But, hopefully we get there with all of this.
For sure.
And that's what we're trying to do.
And stepping outside of GBM for a second, what do you said like you like to just, enjoy yourselves. What do you guys like to do for fun? Like, how are you spending your free time? Like, what makes you happy?
Isn't that funny? I asked him the same question today. I was like, what do we actually do for fun? And what did we say? Well, we do travel still. Once we got the okay, because we were big travelers before, then obviously things got paused. But once we got the okay, we started traveling again. So I think travel is like the number one fun thing we do together. That's
we go to concerts.
Yeah.
What's the most recent concert you went to?
It was funny because he just live streamed one at home on Friday. That was really fun.
I was live streaming a couple of them. But what did we go to? Alice in Chains, I think.
You always remember them. I never
Milwaukee.
remember them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then we got to go back home, see my parents and, things like that. So that was fun. Yeah,
What's the one we went to with the Riv? Was that Alice in Chains? No, who did we see at the Riv?
That was Jerry Cantrell. He's still part of Alice in Chains.
Yeah. So obviously, so vacations and concerts, and we go out to eat with our friends and things like that. Like pretty normal, typical stuff.
Are you big foodies? Because when you walked in here, you mentioned there was a restaurant that just closed down.
And literally,
the
restaurant we're going to after this, like we
love it. Amazing.
Venezuelan restaurant.
But we're when it comes to diet, we are completely separate.
We've changed so much.
I'm more on the
he's
vegetarian.
Cleaned up so much.
I
kind of eat whatever.
Yeah, she does whatever she wants.
Yeah.
I don't eat cheese. I don't.
Must be hard being from Wisconsin.
Yes.
Well, you know what? The whole cheese thing just grosses me out. I'm like, where did this come from?
And that's a new thing.
Really?
Yeah, that's a new thing. So
Okay.
I think some of the things like the change in your taste comes from the medication. I just think things changed with the medication. He's like, I can't have beef anymore. I just can't have it. I can't have cheese anymore. And I'm like, all right, more for me.
One day I love something, and the next day I hated
Yes.
it. It was just like, ooh, you know.
It was really weird.
But I never missed a meal.
Yeah, that's right.
Through all the treatments. But I attribute that to marijuana and
CBD. So when this whole thing was happening, Illinois recently legalized marijuana in our state. And when this happened to him, it was December 2020. There was a study that just was released, maybe not right then, but very recent from Germany that had really positive effects on GBM specifically and certain strains of CBD and certain strains of marijuana. So right away, when he was still in the hospital, I applied for the medical marijuana card, had his doctor sign off on it, and we got him one right away. And so when he came home, we got him started on like a tincture regimen, and he never threw up.
Wow.
Ever on chemo.
Wow.
It was unreal, and he always had an appetite. He was always hungry, and yeah, he dropped weight, sure, but the fact that he didn't get sick, I mean, that was huge.
That was one of the hardest thing was, I in the hospital, I think 33 pounds, right? Yeah, 33 pounds I lost. I was paralyzed on my right side, and they still can't tell me how today that I got it all back. They don't know why. They don't know what happened. They're still trying to figure all of this stuff out, and I'm glad if they want to study me, please, but do it. But the eating was nonstop for me. That was one of the things maybe when they took it out of the brain, I don't know if there was a receptor that maybe they took out. It never told me I was full. So I could just eat and eat and eat. It was like, it kind of scared me a little bit. Like, I'm like, what is happening? Why am I eating?
I've now become a human dumpster.
Garbage disposal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was still watching my diet though.
Yeah, you still maintained a clean diet, and you have to now, obviously, for medication reasons. But yeah, it's just your taste, everything just changed.
Yeah, everything changed. Yeah.
So going back a little bit, at the start of the journey, like before anything happened, were you feeling like anything different? Did you notice any changes like within your body?
Now that we look back, it was like 2 days before it happened, we drove into Milwaukee to have dinner with my parents. I was wearing glasses. And my mom said, "When did you start wearing glasses again?" I said, "You know what? I've been having these headaches, and they're getting worse." My mom said, "Well, like typical mom, you better get this checked out." I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Well, which we did. We got your eyes checked.
Yeah.
Yeah, because nobody thinks, I have a headache, it's clearly a brain tumor. You're thinking, probably my eyesight is changing.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I remember going to the restaurant. I don't remember having had that conversation with my mom.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember that. And then I think the day before, we were running around. We stopped at a Walgreens, and she ran in, and I went to go park. I couldn't remember the gas and the brake pedal.
And he never told me that, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't say anything.
He didn't say anything.
I was, whatever about it. And then the next day, or maybe a day and a
No,
half.
it was the next day.
Yeah, next day, boom, that's when it hit.
Wow.
Yeah, and there I was driving around. I had no idea.
What was your initial reaction, Diane, when everything happened?
So because he initially went to the ER, so the first attendant said, "We found a mass," and Nick said, "They're saying it's brain cancer," and I was like, "There's no way. There's no way." So it was immediate disbelief. And then he lost consciousness. He was intubated. He was bleeding from the brain. It was emergency brain surgery, and everything just happened at once.
Pulmonary embolism.
Yeah, everything just happened at once. It was complete and utter shock and disbelief. That's really, it's so cliche to say, but that is the only thing I felt was just like, we just went out to dinner. What is happening?
Yeah.
It was just disbelief.
How do you feel like you were able to get through that at the moment?
I don't know, because I really feel like I was removed from myself, because remember, this was peak COVID, December 2020. Nobody was allowed to come into the hospital. So there I am sitting in the lobby, and the nurses kept trying to feed me because I was there for hours, and I just couldn't, I was just staring to space, crying, drinking water, and she's like, "Honey, you have to eat something." I'm like, "No, I don't. I'm fine." And it was just like, "No, you don't understand. You're going to be here a while. You need to." It was, I don't know. It was just like a out of body experience. And then the surgeon comes out and tries to explain everything to you, and you're just like, "I'm hearing you, but I don't know if this is reality or not." It was just bizarre.
For Nick, how has Diane, or like what role has Diane played in your entire cancer journey? Like, how has she been there to support you throughout everything?
Oh, if I believed in it, but she's a saint without a statue. I mean, seriously, because I was totally, right when I got home, it was like, I'm home. I'm not leaving here. Because I just wanted to get out of the hospital. I just wanted to leave.
How long were you in the hospital?
Well, okay. So the thing was, I was paralyzed on the right side, and they said he's not going to get this back. So they had to negotiate with my health insurance. So they said, you know what, we're going to keep him here for 4 months, and we're just going to wheel him back and forth with an ambulance. Radiation was right the building across the street. So they were just going to get an ambulance and bring me back and forth every day for the radiation and the treatment.
And then rehab. Then don't forget rehab.
And rehab, yeah. I started rehab in your
ICU bed.
In my ICU bed. Well, first I tried to run away from what they tell me.
He had ICU delirium really badly. So he didn't know.
What is that?
What happens is you're in the ICU for so long that you actually become delirious and you don't understand who you are, where you are, what year it is. I mean, he thought it was like,
I thought it was 2001. I thought I got hurt in a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. It's an actual condition. Yeah. And they said, oh, he's delirious. And he tried to just get up out of bed. And what happened was he has no use of his right side, fell over. And so they flipped out. I flipped out. I mean, it was just, but he had no idea that he just had brain surgery.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he had no idea.
Yeah. I do remember calling you one time and I said, call work and tell them I can't make it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, he was really, really delirious.
You were like...
And so the plan was for him to stay in the hospital for 4 months to rehab his right side. And that was just not going to work for Nick.
Yeah. So I'm so sorry to all those hospital workers, but I really made, like, I would put my left arm...
So the good arm.
Yeah, behind my back and force myself to eat with my right. And I forgot that medical term, but I was curled up, and majority of the food was on my chest. It was all over the place. It was like a toddler. And I said, I'm not giving up. And so then they decided to tie me down because I was trying to get up. I was trying to eat. And then my physical therapist saw this. He was in the room. He's like, you know what? I think if he's got this much attitude,
willpower,
let's walk him around. And then I started walking. By day 4, I was zooming. I was getting yelled at for not having a mask on half the time. And I remember they put the bed higher so I couldn't step down because they took the restraints off of me, and they're like, you can't leave right now. And I'm like, okay. And then there was a COVID outbreak. They had to switch us around between all of the rooms and everything like that. So I couldn't rehab for, I think, 2 days. So basically, I didn't move for 2 days. They tied me down again because I wanted to keep walking. And they said, we can't keep bringing physical therapists in because we have to keep all of our employees safe, things like that. Then when they got me back up, then I got an infection. I got a MRSA infection. I have never felt pain like that in my life.
Oh my God.
When I got out of surgery from my head, I mean, that was bad. It was like the worst hangover I've ever experienced. That's the only way I can say that. But when they cut you open and you're awake, long story short on that one, they said 4 months. I made it out in 17 days.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And here you are.
And here I am. And we had...
not without a stumble, though. There was a reoccurrence.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we made it, 5 rounds of chemo, standard of care, and then the reoccurrence happened. My doctor at the time said, we're going to throw you on Avastin, and...
Pretty much all they can do.
Yeah, that's pretty much all we can do for you.
Those are the only options you have.
I said, yeah, that's not going to work for me.
Well, we let it sit. Remember, we said, let's go home and let's think about it. And it was never sitting right with you from the beginning, from that initial appointment. You said, something doesn't feel right. I don't think I can get on Avastin. I don't think I want to. I think this is not for me.
So I went and got a second opinion, and the doctor was do not take Avastin in your case. They said, if you break this chemo chain, we can never put you on another chemo again. And now we're looking up chemo chains and all this other stuff.
Well, we had already established prior to the reoccurrence relationships with 3 research hospitals, Rush, University of Chicago, and Northwestern. And I had talked to a doctor at Rush and a doctor at U of C, and then we had physically gone in to meet with the team at Northwestern. We went back for a second opinion at Northwestern. In that whole interim, we had done genetic testing on his tumor, and we had those results, but to us, like, we don't understand what any of that means. But the doctor at Northwestern saw something in those results.
And you're gonna hear 17 a lot for some reason, but we went to go see him at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
He looked through all my stuff. He looked through all my reports. He calls me at 7:17 in the morning. And says,
The next day, yeah.
The next morning, says, I have a treatment for you. Do not take Avastin.
Yeah. He's like, please come be my patient so I can treat you.
He said, come back again today.
Yeah.
So we went back downtown Chicago again. And then they laid it all out. The only problem is you have to fight for these drugs.
Yeah, so essentially it's a list of, and I'm sure you know this, but it's a list of drugs majority of the time used for other cancers that for some reason have matched with your genetic mutations, that there have been studies done that found there were positive results in patients with glioblastoma. And there's a list of like 8 of them. To get those drugs, even to get one of them, is miles and miles and miles of red tape. I mean, you really have to like sell a kidney to just, it's very difficult. So that was kind of the road we got on.
Yeah.
It was like, let's see if we can fight to get one of these medications.
Yeah, so we petitioned.
And while this is happening, he's not being medicated. He's not being treated. Yeah.
Yeah, I went 90.
Yeah, about 3 months. Yeah.
About 3 months, with no treatment.
Wow.
And this
Talk
tumor,
about nerve-wracking.
Oh yeah, every day was it was unbelievable. And then finally got a call from, at the time it was, I think the hospital was handed, I forgot who.
Yeah, it was Northwestern.
They said, we got the pills.
Yeah.
And we're mailing them to you right now.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so then I had to go in for here's another one. 17 days later.
So he went. So we had the initial scan during the second opinion. He saw the reoccurrence.
Yep.
Finally got the medication 3 months later. Then went in for a scan 17 days after the start of medication.
And the tumor stabilized.
Okay.
And he's like, this is the best thing we could ask for. Let's keep doing this.
So they doubled up. So he'd put him on another chemo plus the other medication. So now he's like,
yeah, so I did
cocktail.
another CCNU, which I think you're only supposed to do 4 rounds.
Yeah, you ended up doing more than that.
I ended up doing 6 rounds of that, plus this other medication. And it was only because my body could handle it. And they said, let's just keep doing it. So I went off the chemo, and then I started on other drugs. And within another 17 days, we did another MRI, and it stabilized. Then we went back to...
No, I think the first three MRIs were all about 4 to 6 weeks apart.
Okay, that sounds
4
about
to
right.
6 weeks apart. So you had a stable one, another stable one, and then I think the third one was when we started seeing actual shrinkage.
And the tumor shrank.
Yeah.
And it shrank for 5 more rounds.
Yeah.
Wow. So where are you at now?
It's
Stable.
stable.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, my doctor doesn't like to use...
Well, he says it's the size of an eraser.
Yeah.
So, and there's some scarring around it. He's not worried about it. So they like to call it stabilization. They don't like to, they don't like to say anything else.
He said even if it was totally 100% gone, people like to throw around that NED, no evidence of disease, they call it. He doesn't like that. He doesn't like to use it. He doesn't like to, he just likes to stay with stable.
Yeah.
And let's just keep going.
Right.
He doesn't want any expectations, good or bad, because I understand that. They go, well, you said this.
It's just so unpredictable. It's such an unpredictable disease. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what is life like for the two of you now?
Well, I can't lie. Every scan still presents anxiety, right?
Sure.
It still presents like, okay, what is this going to show us? So I think there's still that. And I think there always will be. I think any cancer patient has that, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, right now I could say, you know what, well, I'll just wait. But the morning of that we go, it's like, what's happening again?
Yeah.
It's no matter what, it's nerve-wracking.
But I think that we try as hard as we can to normalize life and just do everything we used to do before with a bunch of doctor's appointments sprinkled in, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the best things I think out of all of this was seeing and educating yourself on what they can see or find in your blood, and you're eating too much this, you're drinking too. It's just amazing to me. It's just, it's like education within education, learning about something that they thought was impossible. And now with the methylation,
well, I'll get into that. Yeah, I'll get into that in a second.
It's like leaps and bounds.
It really is.
From two years and couple of months from where it was.
Yeah.
And it just, that still hasn't hit me. It feels like a movie with the happy ending.
Biodexa Pharmaceuticals is proud to sponsor the Glioblastoma AKA GBM podcast. Biodexa Pharmaceuticals is a small biotechnology company hoping to make a big difference in the treatment of glioblastoma. Using their proprietary nanotechnology, Biodexa is developing liquid formulations of an investigational drug which can be delivered directly and locally into the tumor via an implanted catheter. This drug has been previously investigated in pediatric patients with brain tumors. Biodexa Pharmaceuticals is currently running a clinical trial in patients with recurrent glioblastoma known as the MAGIC G1 trial. To find out more about the MAGIC trial, visit magictrials.com. Imagine waking up from brain tumor removal surgery knowing that your radiation treatment is already underway. That's how gamma-tile therapy works. At the end of brain tumor removal surgery, the neurosurgeon implants the gamma-tiles where the tumor is most likely to return. So instead of waiting to start daily standard radiation treatments that go for weeks, you get a head start against tumor cells and get back to your life sooner. For operable brain tumors of all types, including glioblastomas, brain metastases, meningiomas, gamma-tile therapy is a one-time, targeted radiation treatment with fewer side effects and far less chance of hair loss than external radiation. Gamma-tile therapy is tough on tumors and easier on patients and caregivers. Learn more at gammatile.com. Gamma-tile therapy is an FDA-cleared radiation therapy for patients with newly diagnosed malignant brain tumors and recurrent brain tumors. Novacure is pleased to support the Glioblastoma AKA GBM podcast. Novacure strives to extend survival in some of the most aggressive forms of cancer through the development and commercialization of their innovative therapy called Tumor Treating Fields. Novacure partners with the Glioblastoma Research Organization to work together on behalf of patients and their loved ones impacted by GBM. To learn more, visit novacure.com. Rune was built by a team of patients, caregivers, and medical experts, consisting of neurosurgeons, neuro-oncologists, psycho-oncologists, radiation oncologists, nurse practitioners, and social workers who have devoted their lives to treating and helping glioblastoma patients. For anyone navigating GBM, Rune offers a wealth of medically vetted, digestible video answers to common questions. Answers are organized into major topics ranging from surgery to radiation to caregiver mental health. Check it out at rune.com.
And that's what he was talking about with the methylation profiling. So just shy of 2 years, December of 2020, this past December. So a couple months before that, Nick decided, and we had bounced this idea off of each other, but it had to come from him whether or not to go public with his story. And so when he decided to do that, I reported on his story, and we did a pretty in-depth piece of all of the, not just the genetic testing, but this methylation profiling, which, to be honest with you, we didn't know anything about or how incredible it really is. And then so in that reporting, we came to learn from Dr. Craig Korbinski, who's like the head of pathology over at Northwestern, that they are one of 6 hospitals in the country that collect tumor samples from anywhere, from anyone, doesn't have to be a Northwestern patient, in order to study essentially the fingerprint of the tumor. And that's what methylation profiling is, different from genetic testing. They're looking at the actual fingerprint. And with that, up to 33% of the time, it's a different diagnosis and a different treatment. So no, it's not 100%, but 33% is still something. And I think that we were blown away by that fact. And so when we aired that story, we first aired it on ABC7 Chicago, and then Good Morning America picked it up, and then it just kind of moved from there. We had so many patients contact us and say, what is this? Like, why don't we know about this? Because if you're not in one of the cities that's doing it, you probably don't know about it.
Right.
And so it's been a real awesome movement to help those patients connect with a doctor or an advocate at Northwestern so that they can get their information to what they call the brain bank and sample their tumors again. And it's just been really awesome to see and connect with those people. I think that's like the biggest thing we've gotten out of this.
For sure.
Yeah.
My next question, I was going to ask you, what is the most, and not health related, but maybe just more of like an overall like life perspective. Like what's the most important thing would you say that this whole experience has taught you?
I think that because one of the things that we talked about during all of this was imagine you're a patient that was either alone or older and didn't have somebody to advocate for you or ask the right questions or delve deeper, and you're lost. And here's this diagnosis. Oh, hey, you're going to be dead in 14 months. Good luck. I mean, it's devastating and you don't know where to turn. But there are so many people, you and so many others, that are trying to educate as many people as possible. Mm-hmm. But you still have to search for that information and be active and do all of that. And a lot of people can't do that. It's a devastating diagnosis. And when you're in that dark place, you need somebody to pull you up and say, let's see if there's a clinical trial. Let's see if there's another hospital that can see you and look at your tumor. And for us, it's been connecting with those people. I think it's super fulfilling. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it just makes us really happy.
Yeah, especially when they get back to you and they say, they found a treatment
for
my daughter or my son. It's like, this is amazing. And that's what our biggest thing is, just to give people hope. Hope is a powerful drug.
Yeah, and we're never going to say, this is 100% going to work, or this is 100% going to change your life. We've always been super realistic. Like, this may lead to nothing, but it may lead to something.
Right.
And if anything, we can connect you with somebody that may know more than what we do, or may know something better than what we know, or is more educated. So I think being that little bitty advocate for somebody that maybe doesn't have one
for sure
has been fulfilling.
Well, even with the glioblastoma in general, they're starting to put people on, what is that, antidepressant? now?
Prozac, yeah.
Prozac. Mm-hmm. This was 30, 40 years ago. They were giving it to younger kids. Mm-hmm. They're finding out it's putting people in a better mood, and their tumors are being switched around weird, and they're shrinking, and just with that and chemo.
Yeah. So that how it affects the receptors. So it's putting them in a positive mood. And the idea is if you can be positive for your brain.
It's really helping the brain out a lot. So it's just wild that all the stuff that these doctors and everybody are coming up with or thinking about. And it's a very difficult cancer. They had me look under a slide of a GBM cell. I don't even know I could see why there hasn't been many treatments. It's just, there's cancer cells everywhere, just everywhere. How do you target this? How do you find anything out from this when you probably just go, on to the next one?
Right.
Yeah, it's a puzzle for sure. And I'm hoping that they at least come out with something that can prolong people's lives to accomplish what they want to accomplish.
For sure.
That's pretty much the hard truth. People in this position, I remember we hit that 10-month mark, and it's just like, we both wanted to say it. It's like, is this our last 60 days together? Is this, last 30 days? That's the harder part.
Yeah. Putting it, like you said it in the piece. You said it's very difficult when somebody puts an expiration date on you.
Yeah,
it's like you're a piece of meat, and like, here you go, there's your stamp. You're gonna be dead in 14 months. It's devastating.
It is devastating. Yeah, and you got to think about. You try jamming so much stuff into life.
I was just going to ask, when you received that, was there anything where you're like, I have to do this, I have to do this?
No, because we didn't want to believe it. We never for a second believed it.
No, they only canceled, or I couldn't go on one trip that because my blood cells were too low from all the chemo.
It was dangerous to travel,
Yeah, they said it was dangerous there.
That was the only thing we had to necessarily change. But we never ever said, well, let's do all of these things because we don't know how much time we have left together. I don't think we've ever.
No, I didn't want to do that because I didn't want it to be sorrow every second you're sitting next to your wife. You wanted to laugh. You wanted to.
Yeah, right. And if we're going to go down, we're going down swinging.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
present day, do you need to get checked before you travel every single time, or does it not matter anymore?
It still matters, but
blood work.
Yeah, it's simple. It's blood work, and we typically, just for our comfort, we like to.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary, but I think for our comfort, it just makes us feel better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's pretty routine now where, we know it's going to be either every 8 weeks, 7 weeks.
Yeah. So we just kind of schedule things
For sure.
around that.
Yeah, exactly.
What's some advice you'd give to another couple that just got diagnosed with glioblastoma?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Ooh, my advice is my biggest thing is when we looked at the numbers, there are a lot of people being treated by an oncologist, which I'm not taking away anything from them. You need a neuro-oncologist. Because they're just going to put standard of care on you. They're not going to try to
Think outside the box.
No. And you need a neuro-oncologist. If you have to travel, do it. It's worth it.
Yeah.
If you can have your sample sent for this next generation, do it. They take it in the mail. You don't even have to live in Chicago.
You don't even have to travel here.
Wow.
Yeah, you literally send it in. Yeah.
And you can just send it in and they mail the results right back. I also heard they're starting to do it internationally now.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they opened it up to Canada, so people from Canada can now send it to Chicago. So
it just doesn't have to, it doesn't just have to be Chicago. So let's say they live in Jersey or something that's close to New York, and I know New York is doing it too. So
Yeah.
I think
Iowa, I think does
Iowa does it too. So I think a good advice would be, I'm not saying take what they're telling you and don't believe it, but I am telling you take it with maybe a grain of salt.
Right.
And if you are willing to fight, and look, not everybody can, but if you're willing to fight, then fight for another opinion, maybe a third opinion, maybe even a fourth. Fight for a clinical trial. Fight for, the chance to think outside of the diagnosis they gave you. It's not always going to be great news, but it may not be as devastating as the news that they give you instantly.
How would you say that this diagnosis has changed what both of you value in your life? Or has it changed anything?
Oh, that's a good one. I really get along with my father-in-law, and I really we see each other every week. I think I value that a lot because it's, time is time. And I look at time in a totally different way now. Sometimes I lose track of it. I'm like, wow, it's already March. It's, it's already this, it's already that. And I think with that, them putting a time limit on me, anytime I see family, my mom, my dad, my brother, nieces, nephews, all of that stuff, I really grasped onto that. And I don't want to make it this is the last time I'm going to see you, but it's I took this for granted before. I did, I really did. It's just we're going to go visit somebody. Now it's let's sit down, let's talk, let's eat, let's do whatever we have to do to make ourselves feel whole again.
Right.
And I think we're getting there. I really do. So it's not the experience I wish on anybody, but I just, with going around and telling a story, I want people to really fight for their own lives. I really do. And I'm not saying, some people are not strong enough, anything like that, but you have to try. You have to try. Because this is a brutal disease. It's just cancer, disease, whatever you want to call it. It's terrible. It's just, we need more education. We need funding. And I think that's what you're trying to do with all of this too. And it's very good that you do this.
Thank you.
Because we don't know when the next breakthrough is going to come, and it's going to be there. It will. I feel very confident and positive that there's going to be some very successful treatments coming out. I really do. There's so much attention on it now.
And Diane, what about you?
I think I've really enjoyed him being in the limelight. I get a lot of joy. No, I'm serious. I get a lot of joy out of that.
I'm on the news for a living now. It's your turn.
Yeah, because here's the thing. He was just never, he was always super private. No, I'm not saying shy or anything, but just super private. This wasn't his thing. And then when he went public with his story, he's like, I want to shout it from the mountaintops. And it was I was so proud. I was like, let me help you get up that mountain. Let's go together. And it's been such a joy to watch him get fulfillment out of sharing his story and helping other people. It's just been such a thrill because his life deserves to be highlighted. He deserves to be highlighted. His positive attitude deserves to be shared and spread around. And that's really been such a joy for me to watch.
Yeah, but you got to remember too, you need a good partner. You do. I wouldn't be this happy if it wasn't for someone who was fighting for me. I mean, and
Well, we fight for each other. Yeah.
yeah. And, that's another thing that we're trying to get funding for. Some people are alone.
Yeah.
Some people,
They just don't know what to do.
they don't know what to do. I mean, they have, in smaller areas, they might have to travel 100 miles to find the next big hospital. And
Or in some cases, remember, they couldn't even have the same radiation machine because they had to. So, yeah.
Yeah, because not everybody has gamma knife.
Or,
not everybody has
cyber
knife, and it's just there should be funding for that too. I mean, I'm not saying every hospital should have it, but it should be within,
a respectable distance.
Exactly, it should. I mean, it really should, because it's not. I wouldn't say fair, because some people like to live off the grid, but at the same time, we need more technology, more machines, more doctors. We need smarter people than you and I, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Where would you say that the two of you have found external emotional support? Like, not from each other, but are there any external factors? Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's like meditation, going for walks. Like, what do you think externally helps you, has helped you,
That's him.
I meditate all the time.
Okay.
I meditate all the time.
Do you have any meditation tips or tricks?
Well, I do it right after I work out.
Okay.
So when I'm at my most
euphoric?
Yeah, exactly. And then
that's actually interesting. I feel like whenever I would work out, like I'm so like
you're so high that
I couldn't just like
calm down.
sit. That's fascinating.
Yeah, so I really, shut the lights off, get everything quiet, and I have to, for some reason with all the chemo, I'm always cold. But when I meditate, I like to be cold. I don't know if that's has anything to do with it, but you just give yourself a good 10 minutes by yourself and think clear. That's how we got to Lucas again.
Yeah.
That morning I woke up and I'm like, you know what? We're gonna go another route.
Yeah.
I'm not taking these medications that they're saying.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's just, I really, with decisions lately, I'm like, yeah, I think that's the one. We should go this way. I'm more confident in my decision making ever.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Usually it's, should I do this? Should I do that? I'm like, no, I want to do this.
Yeah, trust in your gut.
Yeah.
What about you?
I haven't found it yet.
Okay.
Honest, I have not. I am just on that roller coaster, and I have not figured out a way to calm down yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll get there. Because I never stopped working during this whole thing. Like, even when I took 2 weeks off, obviously, when he came home and stuff to help with the infection. But other than that, he was up on his feet and wanted to be independent from the beginning. And so I either was going to suppress that and stay home with him and baby him, or let go, have somebody on standby not very far away, and let him do his thing. And I chose to let him do his thing. And so I have been working pretty much the entire time since he was diagnosed. So there really hasn't been an opportunity to step back, and maybe that's a good thing for me. Like, I haven't.
I was going to say, like, another question, like, do you think staying as invested in your career has still continued to help you, like, be as strong for you and for Nick?
I think so. Yeah, I think so, because you can go down a very dark path if you start to think about all the little details, because it does creep up. If I let that fester, it's not going to be a good thing, because some of those memories are just horrible.
Yeah.
So for right now, I'm just like suppressing that, and I'll deal with it another time.
And then one more question to start to wrap up. What's something you haven't told Nick in regards to this entire experience that you want to tell him?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. What have I not, like, you mean like of like the what happened, or
just
like
anything, like, I don't know, if there's maybe like something that's like inspired you about him, or like a way you've been feeling about something, or if there's just anything that you just like haven't shared. Because at least like for me, when I was going through my father's diagnosis, like there are so many thoughts I never got to say. So I'm just curious if there's just like any like thing that's just like on your mind that you just kind of like think about.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I don't think I've ever said it to him other than when we sat here and I said it, I'm incredibly proud of you, because it's very hard to share your story. It really is. It's not for everybody. And I'm just really proud that you did that. And I think that I should say that more often, because it really is something to watch when you shine the way you do, when you help people. Because if you think about it, that's how we met, was him, a firefighter, doing the rescue thing every day. He's a hero. I always say he's a hero, heart and soul. And he's destined to like help people. But I've never stopped and said, on this particular journey, you've made me incredibly proud.
We were just too busy.
You guys are going to make me cry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we've had deep discussions about stuff like that. And there was one where I did finally come out and I told her right out, I said, there were days where I couldn't even tie my shoes. Yeah. There were days I didn't remember what day it was. Mm-hmm. I probably mostly with the radiation, but I told her that one time, and I thought about it so much time. Like, wow, that was pretty bold to say to someone who's taking care of you. But I said to her, I said, if you want to leave, you can leave. I said, I know this is a lot. It takes a toll on someone. I don't want somebody else getting sick taking care of me.
Yeah.
How did you react to that?
I said the thing I tell them all the time, honey, we didn't come this far to just come this far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that would have been the one thing that I would have said, but it came out. Mm-hmm. I didn't want it to, but it did, because I didn't want her to.
Yeah, you didn't want to burden me.
Yeah, I didn't want her to, if this all fell through, I didn't want her to sit there and fester on it the rest of her life.
Yeah, and I said, you married the wrong person if you want me to leave.
That's true.
You are stuck with me.
Yeah.
How do you think both of you have been able to, I guess, stay so organized and manage all of the different things as far as career and, coming to do a podcast?
Yeah,
with
not
me?
easy.
Like, okay.
It's funny. On the way here, I was like, I think I need to get a planner. Because there's been in the best way, of course, there's been so many things we've been doing in the entire summer, right? We're booked like every month. I think we've got 2 events leading all the way into summer.
Yes.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, and I said to him,
what do you have coming up?
So we have 2 walks coming up. Oh, we have an awesome event. It's called, and I can't remember, I don't want to butcher the name, but it's essentially it's like a Shoes for Tumor event. So this is such a cool
I think
event.
I know what you're talking about. I think I saw it on Instagram.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So it's a fundraiser that they're going to encourage kids, and especially minority kids of color, to go in to become neuro-oncologists. And they're raising money for, it's like
I
a
did see
fundraiser.
that on Instagram, yeah.
So we're going to be
Super
there for
cool.
that. That's going to be awesome. And then there's 2 walks that Nick is going to be featured at. They're both raise money for brain cancer specifically, not just cancer in general. And then there's a gala that's coming up in May that's also a brain cancer fundraiser that Nick is going to be actually speaking at. So
amazing.
Some really exciting things. But anyway, so on the way here, I was like, 2 things. I said, what is it like having a secretary? Because I was like, I'm your secretary now. And then I think I do need a planner.
I think the follow-up question is, what's it like having a secretary that doesn't have a planner?
There you go. Yeah. Well, half the time I have like she says, we put it in our phone, and I'm like, how many times I do it this week alone? I'm like, okay, let's go over
let's go over this month. Let's go over this day. When's the podcast again? Or what do we? Yeah.
And you got to plan.
I think I need to have a board or something much more sophisticated.
And then we try to give ourselves at least one day, just us.
Just us. Yep.
Yeah, because we still need. We are,
us time.
Yeah, we're still married.
Of course.
You know what I mean? It's like this is still my, my wife, and so we still need to keep up. We had to take a break from Facebook.
Yeah, the questions were getting a little overwhelming.
Well, people found out our phone number.
Oh, wow.
People were mailing stuff. We don't know how all that happened.
Yeah.
And then some guy was saying, oh, you tell us the cure. You found the cure.
Yeah, you're in remission. Great for you. And I said, that word never came out of our mouth.
Came out of any of our stories, any of our podcasts.
Thank you,
any
sir,
of our
but that never came out of our
TV
mouth.
stuff.
Yeah.
We never said that. We are just trying to get people to get this methylation profiling and start from there. And if this works out really well, and with all these diagnoses now being changed, they're going to keep finding drugs.
For sure.
And unfortunately, the sad thing is more people are going to get this. But hopefully this leads to more drugs that can say, you know what, we can use this on you. We can use, a combination of this and that.
And in the meantime, I think the exposure, your podcast, the Facebook groups, the fundraising events, the exposure is so important. Yeah. And we're so thrilled to be a part of that.
Well, I think also with your career being on ABC, it's done huge for glioblastoma. It's just it doesn't do a lot. There's so much that's not talked about, and it's very infrequently, because people say it's a rare cancer. I don't think it's really that rare in my opinion.
That's what we always say.
Yeah.
We say that all the time. It's just.
And then the people
you
that
always
come out
meet
of the
someone, you're like,
woodwork.
oh wait, I know this person, and it's so interconnected, which is wild. But I think obviously I found out about you guys through Diane's big post on Facebook. So I think it's just spreading awareness, and like the advocacy is so important. So I mean, obviously I know what you guys are going through is so challenging, and like I went through it with my father, but it's so different as a married couple. But like, you know, thank you for sharing your story, and like it's so great to be here with you both.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, thanks for having us. And you know, it's funny because I only knew about you because he was in the hospital and I was looking up Instagram accounts on Glioblastoma. You know, that's how it happens. Yeah. And it's like one thing connects with another, and there you go. Yeah. It's terrific. So thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, that couldn't have been easy for you. So thank you. And then doing all of this, you're just doing more good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so one final question for Nick.
Sure.
What's something you would say to someone in your position right now that has glioblastoma? Breathe.
There is a lot of things happening in this field right now. And like I said, if you don't have, and I'm not taking away from any doctor, if you are not comfortable with your doctor, that's a sign. Get a neuro-oncologist. I can't believe how many people that we have talked to who just have an oncologist, and I'm not taking away anything from them. I'm not. But stay in the field of that person's special. If you have to travel, find someone, you know, where you have to get there. You have to put the effort in. And that sucks because it's devastating. You don't want to move some days. And the chemo, you're stiff, you're hurting, you're aching, but you have to keep moving. This is your shout out to say, let's go. We have to keep going. So I want everybody and don't look at this as it's, you know, this bad. Stay positive. It really does help. And it's hard to say that to someone. That's the last thing somebody probably wants to hear. But you have to keep going. Don't quit. Don't ever, ever quit. That's it.
Well, thank you both so much for coming on the show. It was really such a pleasure to meet you. And I think your story is going to inspire many people, not only for what you're going through to stay strong, but also you, Diane, for speaking out and also being open and vulnerable across huge, you know, channels to be able to bring more advocacy to glioblastoma. So thank you both. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Really a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for having us.
That's it for this week's show. Thank you so much for tuning in again to another episode of Glioblastoma AKA GBM. To get in touch with our organization, visit us online at gbmresearch.org or visit us on Instagram or Facebook at Glioblastoma Research. Visit us on Twitter at glioblastoma.org or visit us on LinkedIn at Glioblastoma Research Organization. To make a donation to the organization, which is fully tax deductible, visit us online at gbmresearch.org, where you can designate your donation in honor of someone or find other methods that you can make a donation with. Thank you again for supporting us, for supporting the show, and we'll see you next week. Welcome back to another deep dive with Stash Strong. Today, let's talk about the episode with Diane and Nick. What was your favorite part?
PMA.
Okay. Positive mental attitude.
Yeah, I just think the way that watching them as a couple, you know, knowing what he's going through, what she's thinking, right, in terms of care, love, support while going through treatments, and just the way he kept talking about, he was so positive. And I think it's easy. I know it's easier said than done. A lot of his mannerisms and how he went through things, right, reminded me of my brother, of how he keeps a positive mental attitude. But sometimes people are like, how can you be positive with GBM, right? But you already have enough that you're going through. And I think, you know, getting to a point where you accept what you're going through is a huge part of it, but positivity is also infectious.
Yeah. Do you feel like you had a positive mental attitude during your brother's
100%
GBM journey?
Yeah,
okay.
and it started with him.
Okay.
I think that's a big part of it. It's hard to be positive if the individual going through the brunt of it is not. So we were fortunate because we talk about his smile all the time. And the kid was positive and was never a woe is me situation. Yeah. But you have to have that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because, like, my dad didn't really have that positive mental attitude. Not that he had a negative attitude, but it was very much like this regimented, like, okay, like, what can we do for treatment? And then it kind of, like, became too late, so we couldn't really do treatment. He kind of, like, went to just, like, hospice. So, like, and I also think things were just moving so fast that there wasn't time to, like, how we discussed in another episode, to, like, take a breath, like, take a pause. We didn't have that. And so I think it's something that I've recognized a lot now with my work through the organization, to see there's a lot of people that are really positive, and you can like see their quality of life and how they're doing in their glioblastoma journey, or even like a caregiver or a friend or family member, whatever the case is, like having that mindset, I've noticed from like outsider looking in at this point, is so important.
I think it's what drives change.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's very easy to not be positive. And I think for a long time, no one was positive and nothing changed.
Yeah.
Right? But if you start to get enough, Nick, you know, as he's going through things, being positive, he's going to be heard.
Yeah.
Right? And his story is going to resonate with someone else who might not be at that point that they are currently positive, but maybe that helps them get over that hill. And all of a sudden, again, I'll always say it is not easy to be positive with GBM. But my brother always said, I can only control what I can control. These are the cards I was dealt. I can't change that. I can change my attitude every day.
Yeah. I think it's also fascinating that you don't necessarily think about being positive when you're going through a cancer diagnosis. And even before cancer sort of hits you, it's not something that you're actively thinking about. And I think a lot of the awareness that both of our organizations have done, let's say looking at now versus X amount of years ago, it was so less talked about. Like we said, like there was a huge gap of anything in glioblastoma, so that's why we started what we started. And it's so fascinating to see how this growth in community and a lot of multiple people being positive and having this attitude, like you see it all through social media every day. I mean, you have a ton of posts lined up for May, which is Brain Cancer Awareness Month. Like, it's so interesting to see that it's making such a big difference. And it's wild to think that like a couple years ago, this wasn't really talked about. And now it's the main part of this interview with Nick and Diane. It's like having this mental attitude is so, so important. Even like last season with DJ Stewart and with David
Great
Fitting,
example.
like they're thriving, you know? So I think it's really cool to see.
And then how have you, like, as you look at PMA, right, positivity, how has that helped grow your organization and get to a point where you're making change in this space?
I think it's something that I don't necessarily think about. I take everything, you know, day by day, and I try to be positive because I also notice that, like, when I am being positive, there's growth in the organization. And when I'm being neutral about it, things are kind of like flatlined. And when I'm having like a negative day, like there's no growth at all. And so I find that more so just like the idea of being positive impacts me very significantly as a person. Like I'm very easily affected by like external factors. Like I listen to a sad song, instantly sad. Happy song, instantly happy. So I find that like just a part of my life, like I try to do things or, you know, like activities that make me happy, like eat like foods that make me happy, like have positive mindsets about different things because those small little external factors will help me drive everything else that I'm doing.
Yep. And then that ultimately makes other people positive, right?
Right,
and
exactly.
It's a chain reaction. I think some people listening to this might, you know, again, as we've met and worked with thousands that have gone through this, sometimes surgery, treatment actually changes and affects your brain, right?
Yeah.
As a patient where you can't be positive, right? And there, all of a sudden you see anger or again, not something that I personally went through, but I see it a lot. And I think it's just as important for the closest people next to them to stay positive.
Yeah.
I know it's not easy. And that might be one of the hardest situations with GBM, but knowing they can't control that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not how they were before.
For
and
sure.
I think trying to remember how they might be before at that point to stay positive around them can also help the care. And just like you said, on days when you're positive, GBM-RO does better, right? And on days where it might flatline. And I think it's the same from caring, right? You're going to have down days. That's okay.
Yeah.
But if you stack up more positive days than not, you're going to help your loved one get through this disease. You're going to help your family, your community, whoever is involved in that fight, I think come out, you know, in a better place.
For sure. And that's why I also think external factors too are a really big help. Like, for example, let's say you're having a really hard day, like let's say it's a surgery day, and like that's rough, like it's not easy, but like you can try to listen to some happy music. You can eat something that makes you happy. Like there are still things, you know, you can go for a walk in the sunlight, get some vitamin D. Like there are still things that you can do to not be like sitting in the sadness. There are things that you can do to even give your brain a little bit of like serotonin, a little bit of dopamine to help you feel a little better. And I think that's so important that you don't necessarily have to have the most positive day ever, but it's about taking these small steps to help whatever you're going through maybe feel a little bit more positive.
Yeah, and when I hear like a story like theirs, and I was listening to her last night, and PMA it changed my mentality immediately, right? Like when people who are faced with GBM stay positive, it lights a fire underneath me to do more with Staff Strong. Because if I can look at someone like Nick, who's positive, right, who is doing everything he can against all odds to get more tomorrows,
For sure.
I'm going to do everything I can to push forward the envelope, to raise more dollars for research, to fund, more research grants, to ensure that someone like him is getting more tomorrows.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us again on another deep dive with Staff Strong.